mention you're here in service to love, and that's your fuel. And why is there other than love around us?
How deep you want me to go? Address that question. Why is there other than love around us? Response A. Really? I hadn't noticed. I only noticed love. How about that one? You like that? If I had a long beard, white hair, long hair down here, or a bald, shiny head, then you might say, oh, so deep from the guru. I remember when I was with Dr. Deepak Chopra in 1994, and he was telling the story of his grandfather who was a yogi, who was up meditating in a cave, and someone came up there to retrieve him. And when they got into the cave, there were snakes all over the cave, and they got over to him, and there were snake bites all over him. Once they shooed the snakes away and they pulled him out of his meditation, they said, how is it that you survive these poisonous snake bites? And he says, what snakes? I see only God. So in a certain way, that's kind of like, it's a reasonable approach to say I only see love. What we call evil, what we call darkness. If we are to attain what we call love consciousness, it means that even in those forms of manifest reality, there is this dimension of love. So, hatred would not exist if there were not some love involved. My experience of your hatred is actually your behavior and your intentions towards me, which relate to your loving something, someone, that is not being affirmed by my presence or my action. Is it not? Aren't those who wreak the great violence on this planet professing at the same time to have love for their kind? Is not the impulse to survive, to kill in order to survive, based in a love for that which we must protect? Even the great violations of the commandment, thou shalt not kill, is at least adjudicated for supersession by some command that says, go out and love your country, love your God, love your country, love your people, protect your people. Is not the greatest of the warrior one who is guided by great feelings of love? So when we begin to understand that even these exteriorized behaviors of humans, no matter how dark, no matter how nefarious, how evil, how vicious they may seem, no matter how much disregard may appear to be in their behavior, love is never absent. There is love for something that is part of the mix that then has its outpicturing in this behavior. We must be very, very, very careful if we are to accuse anyone of lacking love. We must also be very, very, very honest when we say, I have no more love to give, or there is no love here, or I don't love you. These are the great lies. This is the great deception. The person you married some time before, you are now saying and proclaiming that you no longer love them. You no longer have love for them. You hate them. Your fellow humans, You hate them because of their beliefs, or the color of their skin, or their gender, or their sexual orientation, or their religious and spiritual orientation. Even that is not truth. Hate does not exist without love at its core. Hate is the outpicturing of wounded love. Even apathy itself is false apathy the vast majority of times. True apathy is death. The false apathy, I don't care. I don't care about you. Well, I say it perhaps with passion, which is a contradiction. How can I not care and be impassioned in the same moment? The contradictory nature, therefore, of our language and our social system is what creates the confusion about what is. As such, we wind up in this confusion with behaviors that appear to be something other than love behaviors. If I'm willing to see the love in the darkest of moments, if I'm willing to know the love even in the demonics, if I'm willing to know the love that was in the consciousness of those who have created the most heinous of crimes, the greatest of genocides, and the greatest of environmental destructions and distortions. If I am willing to see the love and know the love that exists within all of that, then I have a means to enter into a field of unity. I have a means to access a possibility of peace, peaceful resolution, of evolution towards a greater harmony of environment. So, in that sense, yeah, it all comes down to love, you know? And yet there's another way of looking at it. When you travel around India, sometimes you have these gatherings and the guru is there and they're answering questions, and there's this sort of everyday staple set of questions. And often that comes up as like, oh Guru, why is there suffering? You know, why is there evil? Why is there death? Why is there starvation? Why is there hatred? And then the Guru might say something along the lines as it is necessary to have the opposite, or otherwise you would not appreciate this. So hatred exists so that you can appreciate love, so that you can know love deeper. Pain and suffering exist so that you can know joy. These are partial answers. They are useful. And they come with great wisdom attached to them, and yet at the same time they are partial. They're partial because they don't address the cosmic constitution of all existence itself. They address certain tendencies and certain laws that are in play and in flow in the universe, and they simplify them down to a localized level of human activity in a way you can say kind of dumbed down to the level of the questioner, yet with an immense sincerity. They are incomplete because the human experience of these things, these phenomena, these processes, is not the totality of the experience of such. The conscious everyday experience of love, or of hatred, or of violence, or of pain, or of suffering, or of darkness, or of truth, of joy, the human experience of it is only a small part of the segment or of the spectrum of the existence of any of these topics. And secondly, the path to understanding the broader experience of all of these things, even love itself. The path to understanding is that path that invokes the detachment from the human experience thereof. So even to understand love in its purest sense is to detach yourself from the human experience of love. Are you willing to do that? To detach yourself from the human experience of pain and suffering, the human experience of ignorance, the human experience of loneliness. How about the human experience of exquisite joy and pleasure? Are you willing to detach yourself from that? The willingness for that kind of attachment is what allows one to access the higher level of the stream and the flow of the existence of those phenomena, those states of being, those streams of consciousness. Ultimately, we transcend the construct of the self as a container for the experience of any of those constructs, for the experience of love itself, or hate or fear, or truth or light or dark. If we are so willing to continue the expansion, we begin to enter into the realm of oneness with the elementals themselves, the elemental constituents of all reality. And that is when the knowing of love as primordial, existential essentiality of all existence, as tools of source to create a cosmos. Such knowing is what one has merged into as a field. You can call that enlightenment, you can call that ascension, you can call that oneness, unity consciousness, cosmic consciousness. In the attainment of that state of awareness is revealed the mechanics for the unflow, the flowing forth of all of the cosmos, of all of reality. From that state, it is also appreciable that which appears to be so different. It is also appreciable the understanding of the journey of anything that exists to have a way to be aware of itself as existing. And part of its awareness of itself as existing is to know separation and difference of itself from something that is considered other than itself. And part of that experience of itself is thus the experience of that difference in a spectrum of sentience and a spectrum of sensual experience. What does it feel like to be different from that? And thus come sensations. The sensation of pleasure, the sensation of discomfort, of pain. And from such come desires to be similar to or different from that which is other than self. And from this process unfolds the realm, this what we call samsaric realm, unfolds this realm of pain and suffering. And from that also emerges the desire to relieve pain and suffering. And in early stages of the expression of that desire to relieve pain and suffering, because the consciousness of scarcity and suffering may be so strong, the urgency of the relief of one's sense of pain and suffering may come at the expense of others. And this is called violence. As one learns more one learns compassion. Rather than attacking one another, perhaps there is a way to come together in a collective effort to relieve the collective pain and suffering. And this process continues and continues up. And yes, in its intermediate states, it looks like the group of us come together to relieve our suffering, but it means we have to deal with the group of them over there, because they're causing us our suffering, or they potentially could cause us suffering. And so now we have war. And we learn to grow beyond that into a greater collective, a greater unity, still with the intent of relief of pain and suffering, until we come to realize that the greatest relief of pain and suffering is not by how we physically organize and how we get and grab and bring together and hoard. That the true relief and release from pain and suffering as the entrapments of the human experience is the path of awakening. And this path through the heart, especially most effective. Not the only, but yet the most effective. And thus the path to infinite love is the path of enlightenment and the relief of pain and suffering, from which comes a dedication, a devotion to such a path. In such a path we have the return of the Christ consciousness, the awakening of the Buddha within, the path of the Bodhisattva, and thus ultimately the return to oneness with Source. So, that's the other side of the answer to your question. Hope that's useful. You're welcome.